Welcome back to Fear and Beer, a Halloween Horror Nights podcast. Join us as we venture year-round into the fog.
Make sure you give us a like and a follow on your podcast platform of choice. Also, be sure to check out our YouTube page where we upload every episode in its video format, and maybe a few other surprises as well.
Make sure you're following us on social media to keep up to date with our newest haunted content.
I'm Nick.
I'm Seamus.
I'm Jamie.
We aren't even into the next year, and we're already starting to talk about speculation. Well, that's just how it goes here. We try to do this one very, very early, hence the name, way too early. So we'll see what will happen. We're going to recap what we talked about last year a little bit. I have the list of items that we mentioned last year, and we'll kind of go over some stuff from that, and we'll kind of bring you in at what we're already eyeing for this year, whether that's IPs, whether that's originals, and possibly a scare zone. I have one scare zone on my list already. I started my notes app for way too early, HHN34, back in, I think, August. Just like jotting ideas down. So it only shows me the last time I updated it. I wish I'll remember to do this next year. I'm going to put the start date on when I start that speculation, because in my head, the wheels are turning, and I got some good ones this year, I think. I really think I honed in on a couple things. So, and, you know, hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. Hope you're enjoying your Black Friday. There's not shopping like it used to be. You don't have to go out at midnight anymore like we used to back in the day to get those crazy
so much
deals.
Fun.
Those were the days. Those were definitely the days. But yeah, with the holiday coming up around the corner, this one might be a little bit of a quicker episode. I don't have any crazy beers. I had some Bud Lights I wanted to kill in the fridge. So, and I just want something. I feel like I need some water. So this is my water. Like,
it's what I'm drinking.
This will hydrate me. My mouth is pretty dry right now, so a Bud Light should do the trick.
But I do have some ciders for tomorrow for Thanksgiving, which is nice.
I do have one other beer that I purchased a couple weeks ago that I'm saving for an episode, but I just didn't feel like cracking it tonight. I just want something refreshing and a nice crisp Bud Light.
I was just going to say crisp.
Always brewed using the choicest hops, best barley, malt, and rice. I mean, sure.
Can't go wrong.
Whatever you say, Bud Light. All right. Let's get into this. So, before we start kicking around ideas for 34, I want to go through my notes of last year. So, I went through my notes last year, and then I went and kind of re-listened to the episode a little bit to make note of what we said about certain things. So, I'm not going to go through everything that we mentioned, because you can either go back and listen to it now and see, you know, if you want to be some sort of sicko and see how wrong we were, you can go listen to it now if you want to. But we did mention, obviously, our Universal Monsters guest last year was, my big thing was Universal Monsters Creatures. I thought it was going to be Frankenstein and Creature. Obviously, we got not even close to that, but, you know, Frankie was still in the house. Icons. We mentioned icons last year. You and Seamus both said no new icon.
Well, wasn't I fucking wrong? I mean, even if they didn't utilize them to their full potential, I guess we got some new icons.
Mm-hmm. No, we did. Mm-hmm. I kicked around the idea, and this wasn't in Orlando, but I, for whatever reason, mentioned Mexican luchadors. And that was the scare zone over in Hollywood this year.
I remember when you talked about that one.
Yeah, I don't know why I had it. And I have a couple of those ideas on this year's list where I don't know why I have it, but it just kind of came to me for whatever reason. We mentioned Slaughter Cinema. All of us said it would be very likely. So that's a little...
Look at us.
That's a win right there. That's a check in the win column.
The only one I had any input on.
We did say we tossed around Major Sweets. We did say unlikely, but I literally said the words Major Sweets Candy Factory or Major Sweets Factory, one of those two iterations. So, you know, I count it as a win. Jamie, you had a weird win. You said there was going to be like a Jaws shark puppet.
Did I really?
I don't know what we were talking about. I don't know if you were talking about Jaws itself, but you mentioned a large Jaws shark puppet.
That's so funny. Really? I
Yep.
don't
I also
remember. I have to listen back to that episode because I don't remember
just
talking
kind of
about that.
I did mention a Western themed house, thinking we'd
That's
get some sort of Western themed
uh
house.
huh.
Obviously, we got a little spaghetti Western style thing
Hmm.
in Hatchet and Chains and Slaughter Cinema. And then now jumping forward to our January episode, which we'll be doing again this year, that's our guess map. We try to do a guess map before the speculation maps because we want to kind of put our guesses from here. We take a month or two to fine tune them up, and then we put 10 of them on a map. We do that before we really get any speculation. We want it to be kind of our final guesses before rumors start coming out. But on the guess map, Seamus said we'd get one right, and I said we would get 1.5 right, and I think we got two right because we got Slaughter and Sweets were on there. There might have been some other ones on there, but those were the ones that were for sure. So we both hit the over. We were right on 2 out of the 10, which by putting them out on the map on January, that's pretty damn good. I'll take that as a win since we're 8 months ahead of the game. But let's get into it. So everything that we're bringing up IP wise is pretty much for a reason that it's being released. But we at least have our sights on it. There's plenty of other IPs that are coming out that I don't even think are worthwhile mentioning. But mentioning these, I think there's a conversation to be had at least. So IPs, where do we want to start? All right, we'll start in my. I did categorize these the IP as doubted. I do want to mention these IPs, but I don't think they're coming our way. They're doing a third iteration in the 28 whatever later series. So we're getting 28 years later with Danny Boyle this year. Comes out on June 20th. I think Cillian Murphy is back. Danny Boyle is back directing that. I think it's a prominent horror franchise. I don't know the distributor, but that's just another zombie movie to me. I don't think that's any chance of being at the event, but they surprised me this year with A Quiet Place. So, 28 years later, just nothing for UO2. I think that's my opinion of it. No chance.
No, I don't think so either. I was even, excuse me, thinking before when we were doing it, I was laughing to myself in the living room when I thought about this earlier, but I thought maybe something along the lines of bringing zombies back to maybe with The Walking Dead again, with all the spinoffs and everything they've been coming out with.
Yeah, there's been a bunch of them, right?
Yeah.
There's the
Daryl
Daryl series,
Dixon, the Carol and Daryl one, the Dead
Carol and Daryl.
City. there's a lot of them, honestly.
Oh,
There's at
please
least
no.
been like 4 that's came out, I know, right? But it's been a while since we've had it, so I think like 2015 maybe.
Yeah, I'd put that back in the
10
note.
years.
Like, yeah, these are all my doubteds right now. That
Yeah.
I'm not putting any stock in this, but I do think they're big names. So, we're getting and this sounds like one of those spoof movies that they make, like ribbing the names of these things. But I Never Forget What You Did Last Summer is coming out in July. Another iteration of the old fishhook guy. I don't know if this is a continuation or one of those remakes, but I figured it was at least fun to talk about. But I think that's a doubt it. That's no chance that there's no reason
No.
for it. This one is sort of interesting, and I did put it in my doubt it, but I could be convinced to maybe be in the likely category or semi, whatever. I don't know what our degrees are of voting here, but the Black Phone 2, October 17th.
That I had that down. As
Okay, so
likely.
you think that there could be something there.
I think there's hope only because they did The Exorcist Believer House without the film releasing.
Yeah, I'm just more curious about this movie as a whole because, like, I love
I
the
think
Black
they would
Phone.
make it
There's no reason for a
2-part.
sequel.
I think they would make it a 2-part house if it was
Another Blumhouse split.
Mhm. But with
Yeah.
everything, yeah, because I think it's just the grabber and everything's been very well received. And
Okay, well then let's put this with one of the IPs that I have as possible, and that would be Megan 2.0. That comes out June 27th. They were on the stage next to each other the whole season in the Scare Zone. Would it make sense to have those two as a house, like a little Blumhouse co-op?
Sorry, the dogs are barking, so I had to mute it for a minute. But
Yep, I heard.
that was that was that was actually going to be my other mashup. Was I even though I thought it would be kind of weird, I had it written down. Was the Megan and the Black Phone too, which I
So
only
were
had
they
two
telling
for
us
right now.
something?
But I know, right? I was like,
Did they do that
interesting.
for a reason? Because it doesn't make sense as to why those two are next to each other.
Mhm,
Very clearly, the most prominent figures caused a lot of traffic in that Scare Zone. They easily could have put one on the other
mhm.
side. Was that Universal showing their hand a little bit? They did that with the
Yeah,
Sweets. They did that with the Sweets truck. Remember, they had Sweets with the 33 as the two E's. I
they
think
did.
that's too much. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that they know some of these things. They very clearly plan these things very far in advance, and I know they like to put breadcrumbs out there for us.
But you even said though too that those were two of the most popular. So I feel like those were maybe the two that they wanted you to see right away to kind of interact with and get photos.
Yeah, but like it would have made operational sense to have them separated so it's not such a giant
Yeah.
crowd at
Mhm.
one. And obviously they know that these sequels are coming out. They could do another split if they go to the old Fast and Furious setup. I don't know. I have Megan 2.0 as my possible. I think that's a, whether we like it or not, I think that is a proven headliner name.
I
I don't
forgot
know
they're
if
even
they've.
coming out with a second one.
Well, that's why, because it's
Yeah,
Megan
I forgot.
2.0 is
Duh.
June 27th.
I
So it
thought you were
comes
just
out
saying that
this.
as like a funny
No,
innuendo.
no, it's called Megan 2.0.
Yeah, I remember now.
So that comes out in June. So I,
Mhm.
I view Megan much more likely than the Black Phone 2, just because
Yeah,
I just don't know what this movie with the Black Phone is, right? Like the grabber's
I am
dead.
intrigued, but I feel like the Megan would be more Megan house would be more plausible only because the Black Phone has already had a part in a house and Megan
Mm-hmm.
hasn't, just had the horde and then the part in the scare zone. But you never know.
Yeah, I think Megan 2.0 is a in the likely contender for
Hmm.
headliners. We've seen it already. The Blumhouse connection. We saw the horde. We saw her in the zone. There's clearly a fan base for it. So
Oh
I
yeah, for sure.
that's why it's in my possible category. All right, so I'll dump back into my IP doubt it category. Well, this is another one that I could be talked into. Saw 11, September 26th. Saw 10 was actually really good. And it sounds so weird saying. I feel like this sounds like every cliche in Scream that's like making fun of franchises that have run the course. But I really, those middle Saw movies are hot garbage. But Saw 10 was actually a pretty good story. But I don't know where they're going from here. It has to be another prequel or some sorts.
I can't even keep up with all the Saw 10. Was that the one that we watched in the theater? Was that the last one that came out, or
No,
was that was Spiral or
that was
something like that?
Spiral. So that was like the Book of Saw. That was a different thing.
Oh
Saw 10
Christ.
was Saw 10 I think takes place.
I don't think I even seen it.
I think it might be before Saw 1. It's either it's in between Saw 1 or Saw 2 or something like that. It's a cuz they bring John Kramer back, but obviously he's been dead
Mhm.
since like the second movie. But this one he's back and he's not really back. It's just timeline is pushed back. So we're seeing like early Jigsaw. So it
Ah.
was it was actually a really good movie. It wasn't just a gore fest for the sake of being like how far can we push the envelope. It was actually a pretty good storyline. But I don't know if they would dig back into the Saw well, because again, it comes out September 26th, but you don't need to be that movie. It could just be a Saw franchise style house compilation. But
Mhm.
they do have Saw at the Six Flags event, so I don't know contract wise if that was like a multi-year thing or whatever, but again, because it's a new movie, it's worth mentioning. Insidious 6 comes out August 29th. They are making another
Insidious
Insidious
6.
movie.
How did I
I
not even hear
it's
about this yet?
It's on the books. It's supposedly happening. These movies are so far out they could get pushed, they could get canceled. But this is not likely. We just had an Insidious house. I don't think they'll do them back to
Mhm.
back. I know how well it was received, but typically that's not something that
Too
happens. But
soon. Mhm.
it's worth mentioning. And he's I don't even need to mention the other one, but the next three are interesting. I don't think we'll get any iteration of them, although we did get a small sample of one at the event for a single day. There's three Universal monster movies coming out this year.
Mhm.
There is a movie called The Bride, which is directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal, which is cool. That comes out
Fun.
that comes out September.
Mhm.
The Wolfman movie
Yep.
supposedly comes out in January, and I guess Guillermo del Toro is doing a Frankenstein movie.
Mhm.
The
I heard
release
about
date's
that with
TBD.
Jacob Eldori, I think, is playing Frankenstein.
Yeah, and
I
I
know
guess
you're
you
not.
could throw
Yeah.
yeah, and I guess you could throw Nosferatu in there as well as
That's
sort
what I
of
was going to say. I
that
think it would
style.
count. Mhm.
But I don't think we're gonna get any of that. I know we got Wolfman at the park, but I don't know if you want to create confusion amongst a another potential Universal Monsters house and the epic characters, because those are going to be
I don't
kind of two different things.
I don't think they're going to bring the old Wolfman back.
Mm, they bullied him too hard,
Yeah,
and then
right.
of course there somehow is another Final Destination movie coming out this year,
Of
which
you know what? Honestly, not upset about that because I feel like Final Destination. There's just so many ways that you could randomly kill people off. So it
mm.
always keeps me interested. I enjoy
So
them.
let's get into some IPs that I think could be possible.
Hmm.
I am really leaning into the fact that we do need slasher representation. I do think, and I think I mentioned, I put it on our guest map last year, but I have to put it back on there again. I think this year's, I really think we get Jason Voorhees back. I think there has to be some sort of Friday the 13th representation at this event. We've had Halloween, we've had Leatherface, we've had Chucky. We took a little break. I think we felt that slasher, that classic slasher missing at this event. That was, I think, one thing that was wrong with it. And I think the whole Freddy Krueger stuff, I think he's still in like legal limbo hell. I think the Friday the 13th rights have sort of figured themselves out a little bit. So what do you put any stock in that? Do you think that's a likely scenario this year's Camp Crystal Lake revisitation?
I mean, it's been so long since we've either had Freddy or Jason, but like you said, with the whatever limitations or licensing rights that Nightmare on Elm Street has, I would think it would be unlikely to see them or to see that franchise back. But maybe it's just because I'm not as big of a fan as Jason or Friday the 13th as you are, but I feel like we would maybe see Leatherface again before we would see Jason.
Oh my God, don't say
I
that.
know.
Don't put that
No, I
out
know.
there.
I know. I'm just saying. And Hollywood had it this. I don't know. I don't
And it
know.
was well received in Hollywood
It
from what I
was. It
heard.
was. It looked cool. I watched the
The
walkthrough. Shout out to Grimlick. My favorite.
multiversal Texas Chainsaw,
For the
the Texas
and it
Chainsaw
was just
multiverse.
it was the 50th as well. So I mean, usually the anniversary years maybe, but I think it would be fun to see Jason. Even though I'm not as big of a fan, he's not my favorite slasher. I still think it would be cool just because it would be something different, and we don't get to see it as often, and it's still a big name IP, and it would
Yeah,
definitely bring in that draw. So
yeah, and a lot of
because that
maybe not
show
with
got
the
canceled though, right? Like it never got figured
never
out with
panned
what it
out.
was
I don't
doing.
know.
I don't
Yeah,
think so. Yeah.
I don't know if it's still in the works or not, but
Mhm.
I I, I haven't really researched that, but I know that's why we mentioned it last year because they had a Camp Crystal Lake series coming to Peacock, but that was
Yeah.
before the rights kind of got worked around. I think it has been settled a little bit now, but yeah, Friday 13th, I'd love to see. I think I'm always gonna those big name slashers are always kind of it's low hanging fruit. It's easy to pick it just because it's obviously a ticket seller, and I think Jason is a needle mover of sorts. So
Hmm.
I'll always
For
kind
sure
of
though.
keep it in the back of my mind that that's a possibility. Terrifier, big success. It just keeps getting more and more popular.
You have
What
it
do
in
you
your
think?
likely category?
These are my possibles for IPs. Yeah.
Possibles? Okay, I would probably put it in possible. I don't know.
I
As much
really
as I
only have
would,
two for my IPs. I just have like Doubt It and Possible.
as much as I would like to see Terrifier at the event, I think it's just too left field and too over the top. They would never. I mean, I
See, I
can't say
don't
they
think
would never.
that.
God forbid they've done crazier stuff before, probably, but I don't know. I don't know.
I just don't. I don't think it's too far out. I really don't. I mean, like, what's there's things in there that are too far out, but you can omit those and not have
Hmm.
it sacrifice Art the Clown. You could literally just have it be like an art house. Just call it Terrifier, and it's just the best hits of art and just him doing his thing, like at a house appropriate level. Because there's plenty of stuff in these houses that are. I
But
mean,
I
we
wouldn't
had
want house appropriate because that's what makes them so like
well, I
unique.
mean
Is that they're
that's pretty
so
vague, right?
ridiculous
Like
and over the top.
you're not gonna have the girl doing the glasturbation in the house, like,
Well,
but
not that.
I mean we've had in houses. I mean we've had the dog cut in half and strung up. We had the whole blood eagle in the middle of the zone last year. We had in Blood Moon children holding intestines around a Mayflower pole. Like there's gore in these houses. Like it's not
Yeah.
what do you think would be too much? Like what's some of the stuff that Art has done that's like too ridiculous?
I don't know. The
Like he's
scene I
just
would
it's
really like to
gore.
see would be the bedroom scene from Terrifier 2 when he's like rubbing the bleach and salt into her wounds and like scalping her and all that
Which
crazy shit. Which I
which
think
that can happen.
I mean,
You don't think they could put
no,
a
I
dummy?
do. It's
Yeah.
not saying, and that's the thing. It wouldn't be as cool as a dummy, you know. But
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, well, you'd have Art the Clown in there working on a dummy prop, like
hmm
put
yeah.
a scalped figure on the bed and have him come out with the salt in his hand and rubbing it on her and laughing at you and stuff like that. You could have the clown cafe scene as like a little comic relief break, or even the entrance of the house, like we're going to the clown cafe. You could have that whole scene there. I think
Maybe I'm just not giving it much hope is because I still see like the Terrifier movies and like All Hallows Eve is like more of like those indie films that like aren't that big yet, but they are that big now, which
it
is like
is. I
so
mean,
weird
now
to
it
think. I
is.
know.
Now it is. I mean, I and Damien Leone is clearly a fan of Horror Nights. He's talked about it on some
Mhm.
interviews I've seen that he's maybe not hinted at talks, but maybe
I think
putting it out there
Hollywood
that
would
he
get it
wants to talk.
before
You
we
think
would.
Hollywood over us? I don't think so.
Yes. Yeah, I
I
do.
think if one got it, we both get it. ILO I think is
No.
too big of a fan to not get his hands on this property as well.
I would hope so, but I don't know.
I if in you talking about them being like indie and maybe not big enough, I think it's big enough for Orlando. I think Hollywood would still view it as like we need Texas Chainsaw, we need the Halloween. They need the weekend. Like they need those big surefires. They don't have the ability to take as many chances on risk, not risky, but Terrifier is definitely a level below your Fridays, your Nightmare on Elm Streets, your Chainsaws, your
Yeah, but
weekends.
that's like saying why would they get the Texas Chainsaw over us not getting it for a big 50th anniversary house, you know?
Oh, I mean, we don't repeat as often, and Hollywood does, and we did have that 2 years before that
2 years
because we
Texas
had
Chainsaw? I
Chainsaw
didn't
at
think we had it
30.
since 2009. I thought it was
Oh, then
29
3
was the last
years.
time.
Then
Yeah, which is,
no,
I mean, same with
it was at the
Ghostbusters.
COVID year. It was at 30. Ghostbusters was 29, so that was with COVID 5 years or
4 years,
so.
almost 5, yeah.
But yeah, Texas gets repeated almost as much as Halloween in recent years at this point. But I don't know. If Terrifier was there, I wouldn't be surprised. Now I'm not penciling it in quite yet, but with the success, we talked about it last year before seeing 3, and the way 3 has been received, it's only skyrocketed the stock that much more. So I had to at least bring that up. And I just mentioned it. The Weekend, they got another house this year in Hollywood. Is that something that they can extend the contract? Can they get another weekend house over in Orlando and bring it on our side now? Would you
So I
want
feel
that?
I wouldn't mind it. I saw the walkthrough this year of the Weekend House over at Hollywood, and I thought it looked pretty fun. Honestly, a lot of the costume designing was really cool. It seemed a lot gorier than the house that we had. Well, they were pretty similar. The first houses that we had for both coasts were almost identical in the sense. So I feel like it was a little bit gorier than the original one that we had, which was kind of fun. And some of the scenes were obviously it was like different music videos and like eras for him and stuff like that. So I wouldn't mind a weekend house, but I personally would rather see another IP take over for it just because we have had it in the past. So I'd rather
Mhm.
something else new that we haven't had to get a chance.
Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
indifferent about it. I
It was
don't
just such a
feel
fun house though, and like the music, and I just love a music
it
themed house or an
was
artist themed house.
it was really cool, but I don't feel the need to go back to that same well. Like if you want to do something in that same world or vibe, like I'm cool with you just doing like an original or a different artist, like or taking another chance than repeating that chance.
Yeah.
December 5th, Five Nights at Freddy's 2.
Oh, my dogs. I'm
What do you
hoping,
think?
man. I'm freaking hoping. I have it down in my notes as well. Five Nights at freaking Freddy's. Better get to see him there.
I don't think it'll happen.
God, don't say that.
Because I was so on
I
board with
don't
it last
either,
year.
but yeah, I
If
was too. And I
anything,
mean,
maybe because it's so big, maybe at 35 after the second one has come out.
I think it's going to be another thing where Hollywood might get it and we don't, and I'd be freaking pissed
I
because
just think
because they have the costuming and everything over there and the stage sets for it where they basically freaking shot it. So, well, not the whole thing,
I
but you know what you know what I
I
mean.
I think Megan is more likely, and I don't see them doing two
I do
Blumhouse
too,
houses. And I don't see them. I think Megan
unless
would be its own house. I don't think they'd split that.
no, I think they would split it. They would never make Megan a full house. It wouldn't be freaking enough to do anything.
I think with the sequel and the first movie,
I
they'd be
keep
able to fill a
forgetting about
house
the
with it.
stupid sequel. I think a Megan and Five Nights at Freddy's house would kind of go hand in hand together, honestly. If they did
I
another
mean,
Blumhouse mashup or twofer,
yeah, I just think they want to have
animatronics,
Megan on the
dolls, yeah.
marquee versus saying Horrors of Blumhouse featuring Megan and Five Nights. I think both of those names are better on their own than second billing under Blumhouse,
But I
if
mean,
that makes
regardless,
sense.
it's going to be probably a Blumhouse presents or like a, you know. I mean,
I
well,
think if it
no,
was solo, it would just say Megan
this year with Insidious, it was just Insidious the further. It wasn't like Blumhouse Insidious
present. Yeah,
early, yeah.
yeah. Here is my white whale calling my shot kind of thing. The Conjuring. The
No.
Conjuring last rites comes out September 5th, opening weekend.
I know it.
I
I
think they're
think it
going to
just
try
finished
to
up.
I think they are close to wrapping if they haven't wrapped already. But I think coming hot off the heels of the success of an Insidious deep dive into the franchise, I could see them trying to replicate that style of scary house with the Conjuring franchise and using the whole franchise as a whole. You don't need much from this new movie, if anything. You can do Ed and Lorraine Warren going through all of that stuff. You could have it do, the Bathsheba house from one. You could have it go right through. And I know you're missing that, like with Insidious, the way it worked to its advantage was it put you in this outworldly world the further where no rules applied. You could jump from setting to setting without it mattering. In The Conjuring, it doesn't really have that ability to play in that fake world. But I do think you could do an investigative look through
Just a
the
haunted house,
Warrens.
I mean. Yeah, or that
You
too,
can go.
yeah.
I would use the first one. Use the second. You can go through everything, and you could just take a best of hits. And I think that they need a heavy hitter, scary IP. I think they're gonna want to redo what they did with Insidious as The Conjuring and make it that like, holy shit, this is the scariest house I've ever gone through. Because you can do stuff with Annabelle, you can do stuff with the Nun, it's even the small characters in two where it's like the crooked man. You could bring those style
I like the
back on
Crooked
the
Man.
have
He's
him
very
on the
cool.
stilts and stuff. The whole them doing more stilt walkers inside the house. I think that works for this
I
house.
like that. I think yeah. I could see I could see them doing a Conjuring kind of like compilation house. I would probably prefer that better. But I really am curious as to either why they've never done it before or how freaking Six Flags got it and we haven't gotten it yet, or what the
Uh,
licensing and
yeah,
titles,
I know
or
it's like it's a Warner Brothers thing, so it's not completely off the table as if it was like a Fox Disney
I
property,
know
but
that's like the
it's
Lost
not
Boys, who
as
is Warner
easy.
Brothers.
Yeah, it's not as easy to get, but
Hmm.
I think it's doable. I think after the success of Insidious, they need to go get a big scary franchise. And if they get one they haven't done before, even better. They're going to like really shock people with that one. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do The Conjuring.
Hmm.
Are there any other IPs that you have in your mind?
Um, this is still for the possibly category.
Whatever you want. I ran through all my IPs now, so why don't we fire off yours and we can just discuss?
Well, I pretty much had the same as yours. Are you including your monsters in IPs technically?
Um, I'm saving monsters for later.
Okay, we could wait then. So we're good because I pretty much just went off what you had, and the couple that I did have on there we already discussed.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So I have a couple originals. I know originals are the
Mhm.
hardest ones to call and lock
I do
down.
have an
And
original or two as well, but you
and
go
it's
ahead.
weird that on our guest map, the two that we got right were originals. Like the
Right?
IPs are a little bit easier. We have a playground to work with. The originals, it literally could be anything. But I'm coming off a lot of these in the sense that we're still in this budget friendly HHN where I'm looking at past houses or things I saw this year that could be repurposed a little bit. I'm using that in the back of my mind to help me gather some of these originals. And I think the easiest one for me to guess is, and I think other people have said it as well, but Hatchet and Chains Demon Hunter from Slaughter Cinema. I think that out of all the Slaughter Cinema segments has the most story to tell. It was one of the bigger rooms in that. We got almost like two scenes in there because of how big it was. I think it's time for a Western house again. We haven't had one in a while. I think it was Curse of Lightning Gulch was the last one that was really in that Western vibe that we got. I think Slaughter Cinema, they came out and said it at one point that this is a testing ground for some of their ideas and to see how they're received. I don't know if Hatchet and Chains was everybody's most well received, but I think it's the best for a house. What do you think? Do you think we see Hatchet and Chains 1 year after?
No.
No. Do you think we see any Slaughter Cinema 2 1 year after this year?
Maybe not a year after, I don't want to say. I feel like that would be too soon, maybe. It's tough because we've never had a. Well, no, I take that back because the Yeti houses were based off the
That
original
it came
Slaughter
right
Cinema.
from it
Yes.
from 28 to
Okay. All
29.
right. Well, you got me there, honestly. You got me there. Well, it's hard for me because even though the Hatchet and Chains was a bigger room, I thought it was kind of boring. It wasn't
Yeah, I know you
really
weren't the
there
biggest
wasn't
fan of it.
it wasn't really a room. You would walk in and it would be the guy in the front and it was like all brown walls with a couple of like maybe Western style pictures. And then it was the big hallway on the left with the body coming down that you never get to freaking see. I missed it every goddamn time. So I never got to see it. But I did enjoy their makeuping and costuming. I thought it looked really fun and I wish I got to see more of it. But if they would
Well,
do
you
a whole
can next year.
house up that, wow, I was gonna say if they do a whole house on it, it would be cool to go into detail of it. So maybe I'd get a better appreciation for it. But I don't know. Western stuff doesn't really do it for me. As much as I
I
said
just
that too about Darkest Steel, I blanked out for a second, even though Darkest Steel wasn't really Western. When we first got those hints on the spec maps and stuff like that, we were thinking it was gonna be leaning more towards that. So
is there so then do you think that this is the most house ready from the Slaughter Cinema 2 rooms or movies
I
story wise?
think Mardi Gras Murders could make for a good house as well.
That's close. That was kind of my number
I
two.
I feel
I'd
like
see
that could
that.
have more of a storyline. As much as I'd like Heavy Metal Hell 3D, it would be kind of cool, but I feel like that would be more of a haunted house-esque style if it was following like the I honestly didn't even watch the full little trailer video that they had for it, but if they followed that storyline kind of, I think it could kind of work for a house, but there
Heavy
just
Metal
wasn't enough
3D is
given in that
tough.
room. Because what was Heavy
No,
Metal Hell's 3D like theme? It was like
the kid like listens to a record backwards and he gets like summoned to hell or something
yes,
like
yes,
that.
yes, yes. That's what it. So
Is
if they went
possessed or
with
something.
that, I think it would be kind of cool. But it just didn't give you enough in the room to really think that you could expand on it.
Yeah, I just don't think that. I think it was cool for what it was. I just don't see enough material there. But Mardi Gras Murders, I do think that there's enough material, and that would be that slasher style vibe. I
Mhm.
just, I that would be fun, but I got to go with Hatchet and Chains. I'm calling that one this year. I think.
Even though you didn't like it, I could honestly see them doing the cyborgs too. I know you don't like it, but
No,
I could definitely see them doing
no,
it, kind of like Alien versus Predator style, that kind of like outer space sci-fi kind of stuff. Yeah, I could
it's
see it.
just laser tag. That's all I could think of every time I went
It's
in there. It was
not
a roller
laser.
skating rink laser tag room.
No, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was cool. And you could have like mutant, like kind of human hybrids combined with robots and all this kind of stuff. It just reminds me of segment from VHS 99 or 89, whichever one, if I'm not mistaken, that I could see being really, really cool.
I mean, they could definitely write some cool story, but from Slaughter Cinema 2's section, I didn't get any sort of story from it. You know, like, are we on
Cyborgs
this
from planet
planet? Have they
Xenon.
come? You know, is like, did they come to our
Mhm.
planet? Are we on their planet? I don't know. And I think
Same
the
with freaking,
costuming would get tricky with that.
same with Hatch and Chains. What's the story behind that? Wrangling up a
The
demon in
tagline is
the
"Demon
western.
Bounty Hunter." They're demon bounty hunters.
Yeah, well,
It's in the name. Hatchet and Chains, demon bounty hunters.
I guess, but the cyborgs are pretty self-explanatory too. Where these demon bounty hunters come from? They're just random demon
They're
bounty
there. That's
hunters.
just we're in their land and they're hunting demons.
Well, we're in the
The bounty
cyborgs
hunter.
land and we're in outer space with them.
That where we are?
Yeah.
Is it a dystopian future? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're giving the answers right there.
Here is my. I'm so proud that I've stumbled upon this one, and I don't know. I think I might be selling myself too much on this one, but I've told a couple people throughout the season because I just couldn't contain myself that this was my like. I feel like I cracked a code, and I'm not going to know if I cracked it until we get there. But I think we revisit the 7 deadly sins because
I remember you talking about this.
HHN34, they love doing these stupid like little hidden things and these number things, and I've caught on to some of their
4
stuff.
plus 3 is 7.
It is. Well, 3 plus 4 because 34. HHN34. And they've done a 7 deadly sins aspect before. I think it was just a scare zone, or it was either a scare zone or a house at one point. But I think this is a route that you could go through in a house very easily. I think you could use that big old fat guy from Triplets of Terror, that prop, the candy maker. That's your gluttony section right there. That's your big prop for that. I just think maybe I'm looking too much into these numbers, but they did a lot with 33 without it being an anniversary year. Everything was, you had the Triplets of Terror, and then you had Sinister and Surreal. Their symbols were the threes and stuff like that. I really do think that they look into that stuff. I think my mind works, and I'm not going to say the exact same ways, but I think we think similarly in this like hiding in plain sight style stuff that I just enjoy doing. Um, but yeah, I really think 7 Deadly Sins. It's time for a comeback. I think you could use a lot of the stuff and props from, if you want to go down that like mythical road. You could take props from the Demon Queen style and the Zodiac zone, Dark Zodiac. I think that vibe would fit 7 Deadly Sins. But what do you think? Do you think that's a viable house?
I do think it is. I think that would be fun too, because like you said, we have seen it before, but only as a scare zone. It's been quite some time since we did have that. Or you just do the movie 7, that'd be sick too.
What's in the box? What's in the box?
I know you'd appreciate that one as well.
I do love it. Detectives,
But
you're looking for me.
as you know, I do love compilation, mashup, anthology sorts of house. So I think they could do a fun spin on the 7 deadly sins and incorporate a story within it as well.
Yeah.
I think
So
if I'm not, I could be wrong. I don't even want to say it. Did they have the Seven Deadly Sins scare zone when they had Lady Luck?
I'd have to double check,
I'd
but
have to look it up too. Could be wrong, but I don't know. I feel for some reason I could just see Lady Luck and the Seven Deadly Sins going hand in hand.
it was a scare zone. It
Mm-hmm.
was 21.
Aha. See, that's why I was thinking that. See, now that'd be cool. Well, now that'd be fun to bring her about in some sorts if they did a house kind of like a little revisiting of Lady Luck and her patron, or not patrons, minions.
Minions. It was a scare zone of the year actually too. So it was a
Mm.
successful scare zone at that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I like numbers and I like playing those weird little those games with HHN. So my next one is another scare zone that I think could come to a house format, and it's also because of something we saw this year in Museum. What if we got a Vikings Undead scare zone turned house?
That would be cool, as long as it
I
didn't
think
smell like rotten fish and made me nauseous.
think it would be. I mean, that was the shining moment of that house, I would say. I think
It
that was
was.
everyone's favorite little portion.
Mhm.
I really like that scare zone a lot. I think you could take property or pieces from obviously the museum, but you could take stuff from Dead Man's Pier if you still have it backed up there. I think you can make a really cool Vikings undead house, and that was a scare zone that if I know if Seamus were here, he'd be singing the praises of it. That's one of his favorite scare
We
zones
all
of all
love that
time, I
scare
think.
zone. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really fun, and I just think that there's a lot of story there, and you could go into this whole. They love doing the mythology stuff, right? With the chupacabras, the monstros, and that like urban legendy style stuff. Not that this is urban legend, but it's more history. But it's kind of that Nordic folklore now, and you can kind of tie stuff into there.
And I feel like they could make it so like stunning too if they did in the sense of like how they did with goblins, kind of like that theming as well. Mm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would put that in one of those new houses in the back.
Yeah.
This is one that was rumored 2 years ago, I think. And I'm curious if it circles back because I put it in here and I don't remember why, but I remember there was a rumor of a Japanese monsters house. So
Mhm.
again,
I
kind of
remember
going off of
this.
that folklore style stuff. Now we've done again, we just talked about all the South American and stuff like that. Do we keep going west and go across the ocean and try to dip into some true Western culture
If
folklore? I
if
don't know
we're
if I don't view it as kaijus. I view it as like the different demons and stuff like that.
if HHN were to go that route and to do the sort of Japanese monsters, creatures, urban myths and legends route, I think it would probably end up being my favorite iterations of any kind of like creature cryptids and stuff that they've had so far, because I just love the whole lore and backstory and learning about all those different kind of interesting things that we don't really hear about versus our Florida skunk ape and Mothman and Bigfoot and stuff like that. So
The
it's
Jersey
always
Devil.
right. I mean, even with Monstros this year, I mean, I never knew about Telepucci or El Silbón or any of those urban myths and legends. So I just always think it's
Mhm.
very interesting. Even school, not being a big fan growing up when I was a kiddo, I was always intrigued when we learn about that stuff in history. So I think it would
Yeah,
be
and
fun to delve into that different culture as well.
yeah, and
Cultural aspect, I should say.
The people behind Horror Nights are big history buffs.
Mhm.
Those two kind of mesh time and time again, and I think this is a fun way to rehash that. I don't know how. I think that I don't know what that rumor ended up panning out to be, or what it could have translated into, or wires got crossed, or whatever. But I do think that that would be a cool option. So, and then I have one more
I have one
cultural
too.
thing.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay, let's. I'll do my
You
cultural
go
one,
ahead. You go ahead. I
and
thought you
then
meant
we'll
one
swing
more
to
in
yours.
general. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. And then my other cultural one, I put museum as my reason. So maybe there was something in the museum house
Mhm.
that made me think of this as well. But doing something in the Mexican like Aztecian world, I can't
Ah,
remember if there was. Maybe I think I just saw like I think there was a section where there was like symbols on pyramids or something like that, and I was like, that would be like kind of cool to
mhm.
dig into the Aztec world.
Like Mayan, Aztec kind of
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, it's similar to like the Japanese monsters in the like the Japanese or the Mexican, like let's dig into some of their history in this folklore, like we did with Monstros. I don't necessarily need to revisit Monstros again. I know that they did that in Hollywood, and maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think going into a different culture and kind of digging up their urban legends or whatever, like you mentioned, we did the Bigfoot, and we've done the chupacabras and stuff like that. Like let's dig into another culture's things now, because again, like I know everyone's clamoring for, they do want a Jersey Devil house or they want a Mothman house, and like
Mothman.
those are all fine and well, but like let's go out of our culture a little bit
Hmm.
and see what other cultures have to bring to the table, because I think more often than not they're a little bit more interesting because
I was gonna say it's a lot
we know
freaking
so
cooler
little.
usually.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
we know so little about them. Even if you don't know a lot about Mothman or Jersey Devil history, like you've heard the name at least,
Mhm.
so it's not as common, or as not as uncommon to you. So it'd be fun to learn as well. But I had the Mexican Aztec because again, I must have seen something in the museum house, and I was like, oh, they could use that as a prop and like
Mhm.
build from there. So you're starting with stuff already. But what are some originals that you have on your list?
So mine wasn't really an original per se, like based off of a house into a scare zone,
Mm-hmm.
but and I thought about putting this in an IP category, but it didn't really. It's kind of more of a general category just because of it could have been IP with the theming wise, but I was thinking more of like an original based on like a fictional television show setting or kind of like game show style setting. I feel like this year has been very big for movies like that, kind of with Late Night with the Devil, Mr. Crockett, I Saw the TV Glow, that movie with your girl that came out on Netflix about her, the serial killer like dating game show with
I
Anna
don't think I
Kendrick.
saw that one. I
Yeah, I
didn't
know you
watch
gotta
that
watch it. It
one
looks
yet.
pretty good.
No.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But I just feel like that's been a pretty big like theming for movies and stuff like that this year. And I don't think that any of the IP films that came out with that kind of setting would fit well for House of Horror Nights. I feel like they were a little bit too indie, maybe. But I
Yeah.
feel like that idea could make for a really cool original.
HR Blood and Guts.
I know he needs to. It's honestly what I'm kind
Like
of.
you can
It's kind
kind
of
of
what I'm
mash
hyping
that.
up here.
You
Yeah,
can mash that with like Run from Eddie's house, where it
and
was
that's
sort
what
of
I was.
that game show.
Exactly. I think it's time for a
Mm,
refresher on something like that because it's just so fun, but also like I just wish they would do something like Welcome to Horrorland, Goosebumps style, and then amusement
yeah,
park turned like monster game show style.
that'd be cool. I'm cool with a
Yeah.
game show style house. That was
Hmm.
that's in a fun environment to play with. Again, you would definitely have to find a way to stretch it a little bit and make it a little bit
Hmm.
more interactive, like you're stuck in the game or something like that.
And you could probably even go like very like campy with it, kind of how like with Slaughter is how I would picture it, kind
Yeah,
of that like style setting, maybe 50 style or
it's such an
yeah.
absurd setting and topic that like you'd
Hmm.
have to go in that goofy campy
You need like
mode,
the
I'd say.
yes. Hmm.
Yeah, I like that. All right, what else did you
Hmm.
have?
That was the only good one I had.
Okay, all right. I
It's
got
harder for me to think of originals than the IPs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of these originals too um, are sort of pulled from other things too. Like I had this was a
I did have a
rumor.
Scare Zone one though,
Okay,
but
we'll get
it was
to.
kind of like a mashup one that I could see being a house.
All right. So I'm
Hmm.
going off of mashups as well now. So
Okay,
I had a dream about this one. So maybe it's a premonition. Maybe.
those are the best.
It is very similar to Slaughter Cinema, but it is
Hmm.
an arcade, and each room is like a different video game,
Ah, now
a
you're
different
talking my
horror video
language.
game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I had a dream about it, so let's see
yeah.
if I can bring it to fruition. I don't. I think I had a dream that I had heard this was happening, and I broke it, and I wasn't supposed to. Like I just someone told me it, and then I either somebody told me it, and I posted about it, and it was true, or I just posted about it and it came true. So maybe that's what'll happen. But an
Maybe
arcade coming back, we've talked about it before, almost as a
in arcade,
Tron
please come
level,
back.
like a Tron style Wreck It Ralph sort of thing where you get sucked into the game. But I think
Hmm.
you could build this as like you got sucked into the arcade, and each room is a different machine and a different style of
Hmm.
horror, maybe not horror, but video game where you're essentially running for your life. I think it was because I was talking about old Nickelodeon shows. And do you remember that old Nickelodeon show? It's probably before your time, but it was similar to what you were talking about as a game show, and you would play on a green screen and you were in the video games. Bringing anything? Nothing to you? Oh, maybe did you? Oh, are
No,
you back?
you
Oh, you
froze. You
froze.
froze.
Oh, we'll see who
What
froze
were you
because I was
saying?
talking.
What
We'll
was?
see.
I
Do
know.
you
What
remember
was it?
that game? It was a Nickelodeon TV show,
What
and
was it? I couldn't hear your
were
description at all. Sorry.
you're in the video games, but you're like playing on a green screen,
Like
and you're like running
like
around and jumping.
Guts? Nick
No,
Guts?
it
Was that
wasn't.
what that would?
It
No.
wasn't. No, it wasn't Guts.
Hmm.
It was called Nick Arcade.
I think I remember like seeing it, but I don't think I ever watched it.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It wasn't. I'm looking at it now, and it was only on for 2 seasons, but it was
I
on. I
used to
think it
like
was big
watching.
seasons.
Maybe that's
But
why I'm kind of
it
in
was
like.
similar to that like Global Guts, Legends of Hidden Temple. Like you're on a green screen, you
Mhm.
have to like jump and go up through the levels and stuff like that, and duck under fireballs and stuff like that. It was like
Man.
old school NES games in the
Mhm.
background, very flat level stuff.
I wish I wasn't too young when all those shows were out and about, man. I would have loved to be on one of them.
Yeah, I was on. It was 92,
You
so
could
I
have.
was 3 years. I
No, you
I
couldn't have actually.
I couldn't
No,
have been
too.
on it, but that was one of my dreams as a kid. I wanted to be on Family Double Dare.
Oh
But I
man,
did
I
get
wish.
slimed. I got slimed at Nickelodeon Studios at Universal when I was a kid.
Which is bullshit because you're not even from here and I never even friggin' been slimed.
All right, let's talk about sequels. Sequels to houses. I have 5, and I think
Okay.
4 of them are not going to happen. But I think it's worth mentioning because these are all successful houses. But this all stemmed, obviously, from Monstros 2 happening in Hollywood. So we can kick off with that. They did Monstros, we got Monstros. They're doing Monstros 2 last year. Do we get Monstros 2 over in Orlando this year? Are they
Mm,
going to try and keep saving budget and bring that over? It was like a new batch of monsters. I don't know
no,
if
because
it
I think they're
got
gonna bring Texas Chainsaw over.
okay.
But I mean, as well as it was received, I feel like even though they sometimes like, I feel like it would just be too back to back for us.
And I just the only reason
Even
I
with it
think
being from Hollywood, I think it's too much.
I agree, but the only
Mm.
reason I think these is because I think we're in this budget era right now with Epic that they're just I don't want to say cutting corners, but like I do think they're taking the easy way out sometimes when they don't have to. And I think that was pretty evident this year. And I don't know if that was just a 1 year thing. I truly think it's until at least 35.
Really? I feel like it was maybe
I,
this year with them just like cramming to get it open so quick.
and I mean maybe, and that's my hope, but I am still until I see it, I can't fully believe we're not out of it yet. But
Mm.
that led me down a rabbit hole of like, okay, well, if we're gonna do that, or if we're not gonna do Monstros 2 and they're doing it, are there sequels to houses that we could see? This was rumored at one point, either last year or this year, early on. I think it was last year, but Wicked Growth 2. Do we see like a
Mhm.
return of Pumpkin Lord before the big anniversary year?
I think he's too far gone at this point.
See, I think we'll see him at 35 as an anniversary, but I don't think we'll get a Wicked Growth sequel at 34 because I don't
I
think
think
they'll
that
want to do him 2 years in a row again.
right. Mhm.
Very very soon for both of these houses. Darkest Deal 2 or Blood Moon 2?
It's hard. That's tough.
I honestly think Blood Moon 2 would be a better option as a sequel.
I think Darkest Steel would be.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I
Why?
do. Why do you think Blood Moon would be?
Because I think that Darkest Deal storyline was worked really well, and I don't think it would change too much. whereas Blood Moon was more of a setting. Like we could play in that setting again versus like going back down the rabbit hole again of like Pine Straw Spruce. Like that was his story, whereas Blood Moon is like a set. It's the story is of the whole setting and the community,
Hmm.
and you could kind of revisit that as a different year or something like that. Versus like the collector coming to collect another soul from another person, unless they didn't do a musician with the Darkest Deal. If they did the Darkest Deal with like a film actress or actor or something like that, you could present it that way.
That was my idea, to be like a different person, like the devil would be following, and then a different like setting, maybe like a film setting or like something still in that like performing aspect, or like maybe that
Mm-hmm.
old Hollywood field, like singer, actress, something. That's what I was thinking more
Mm-hmm.
so. I feel like Blood Moon, it would only be kind of hard because even like you said, it is the exact same setting. So as much as you could switch it up a little bit, would it be too similar to what we've already seen?
Yeah, they'd have to. They definitely would have to
Unless you
change it up a little.
follow, unless you follow the, I forget what the cult's name was, a couple years down the line and see where they are now, kind of thing, and how the town has been plagued by all that. But I feel like that still was presented enough in the first house.
Yeah, I think both of those are off the table. I don't think we'll
I'd be
see
happy
either
with
of
either
those.
or, but
Yeah. Um, this one is interesting because we had a sequel to a house from 28 this last year. So do we bump up a year and get a sequel to a 29 house? Do we did it? Do we get a Graveyard Games 2? That's a pretty easy story to replicate. Just set a really cool
yeah.
like Astro Graveyard World love story style setting.
Astro Graveyard, what do you mean by that?
Well, because it was kind of like this, like there was aspects of that house that were like outworldly, like the little bunch of children in that one room. Like it was just,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. I see what
it
you're
seemed
saying
like
now.
a horror acid trip almost.
Okay, I can see that. Maybe I'm just being negative, but I feel like same thing with Graveyard Games. I feel like it'd be hard for me to see it as something else because it still would be cool, though. I mean, anything they've done many houses before with similar settings, the grave site cemetery setting. So, I mean, I
Yeah,
could probably see them doing something with it.
yeah. I think all of these sequels are not going to happen this year, at
No, I feel
least.
like if it's too hard for me to like think of how I could picture it now, then I feel like it's a little unlikely.
Yeah,
As
I
much
mean,
as it'd be cool, but
I think all of these ones that I mentioned are on my radar of
mhm,
like. I mean, if I saw it, I wouldn't be surprised. Like,
uh-huh.
obviously I could pull. There's so many houses to pull sequels to, but I think these ones were the only ones worth mentioning at least. So these are all everything we've talked about tonight are like it wouldn't surprise me if it came. I don't think some of them are, but they just wouldn't surprise me as far like. But if they were
Mhm.
like Dead Man's Pier, I just don't think that that's gonna get a sequel. I like it, but I
Too
didn't. There's no
niche.
point in yeah. There's no point for me in bringing that one up. But at
Mhm.
least these last five are things that I think are a possibility.
Mhm.
So the only last thing I have to talk about is monsters. So why don't you talk about yours and I'll talk about mine after.
So obviously, you know what my friggin' monster's gonna be? Creature from the Black Lagoon. If we
Yeah.
don't get him this coming up year, with Universal hyping it up, wanting me to spend all my money on all this new creature merchandise that they've been putting out for the 75th anniversary, all this cute stuff, and they even have a new creature nutcracker for the Christmas time in the Five and Dime
Ooh,
store, and it is so cute at
I'm
Studios. If you
surprised
guys
that's
haven't
not in
seen it
our
yet,
living room already.
I sure wish it was. God forbid, but yeah, man, I just really think it's time for a creature house. And at this point, since they've waited so freaking long, I think it just needs to be his own whole house, which would be great.
I
But then
wouldn't I
again,
wouldn't complain about that.
no, I know. I was just, I don't know. I feel like they've let me down too many times already that I feel like this is the year that they should have done it, but maybe that the actual anniversary of the film fell later on. Like, I don't know.
Just so petty at this point where it's like, I don't even want
It's,
it anymore.
I don't even
I
want
don't
it
even, I
anymore.
don't even want the
Exactly.
stupid creature house.
But Yeah, with how much they'd be hyping them up at the stores and selling all the creature merch, I mean, I think it would be a shoo-in to have it there. But, knowing my luck, we probably won't get to see him there. I do think, though, excuse me, I think they're going to bring more of the classic monsters back. Or I could see them doing it as more of a mashup style house as they've done in previous years. Only because with Epic opening and stuff like that, I kind of think it would go along with maybe that
Mm-hmm.
theming. So maybe seeing our classic Frankie come back, Dracula, Wolfman, which creature is also involved in that ride in that universe too.
Yeah.
So, but it would be fun to see a Victoria Frankenstein story.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe a
Yeah.
sequel to The Brides or The Bride of Frankenstein Lives house, which would be kind of fun.
Right.
Because as much as I enjoyed that house, I felt like it was tough just with the COVID limitations and stuff like that. Didn't really get to see it to its full capability.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Eternal Bloodlines was sort of trying to be, was
Yeah, I
that
know.
sequel.
Mhm.
I think the monsters are not getting a house this year.
Really?
I
Okay.
think that maybe
They're gonna give me another friggin' IP.
at most, I think maybe you put them in a scare zone and you do all the monster versions that are at Epic as a essentially like Blumhouse, a billboard scare zone, a corporate sellout scare zone of trying to push you to Epic.
Hmm.
And I
That
think you
would be
themed the
cool.
whole scare zone and you got extra props and
Classic
costumes from
monsters.
all that stuff. I think you theme it as not even classic because the ones that are at Epic are kind of like zhuzhed up. Like Dracula's got that new look, and
He's
you
hot.
have Victoria Frankenstein. Like I think you theme. I think you do a mini little. What's the land called? Like Darkmoor or something like that.
I think so.
So you do like a mini version of that as a scare zone to push people to your brand new park.
I wouldn't mind that either. That'd be super fun.
I think it would be fun to have them in a scare zone
Cause
and kind of not in a house this time to give it a little bit of a break.
I think in the new park as well in Dark Universe, they're going to be having, as they do in Hollywood, the Bride and Frankenstein and Dracula meet and greets, which I'm really looking forward to. So if it'll be the new zhuzh up ones, I think that'd be even cooler.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the route
I
they
could see
would
that being
go down.
plausible, but it would be odd not having a monster house after these last couple years in a row. But
It
I mean,
would, but
it
like
would save them a spot for maybe another friggin' IP that I would like better
yeah, and I
than this
mean
year's.
streaks have to end at some point, right? Like
Mhm.
we've had them since 29 at this point, so what are we on? What is that house number 5? Because we had the original, we had Brides,
Mhm.
Legends Collide, Unmasked,
Unmasked.
and then Eternal Bloodlines. That's 5.
Bloodlines.
So we've had
Yeah,
5 houses. The streak has to end at some point. I can't imagine they just do a Universal Monster House every year forever.
that's true.
Doesn't mean it has to be this year, but I think with Epic opening, it's a good stopping point. So that way, like if you really want to walk through the monsters like environment full on, go
Come
buy a
to
ticket.
Epic.
Go buy a ticket. Come
Mhm.
on over. We're right over we're a couple miles down the road. So I think that might be the best bet. But that's all I have for IPs and originals and zones. The only other 2 predictions I had was marketing is going to continue to mean absolutely nothing to us, and we're going to get another new icon that is not developed.
No
Those
way.
are
You think we're gonna
my
get
other
another one?
picks. Yep. I think they're going to
Really?
continue pushing out
I
new
think they're gonna bring
icons
someone back this
slash
year.
I think they're going to keep doing like new icons slash marketing polls to build up to a roster of new icons for 35 to sort of battle the old icons, which is a theory we've had running for a couple years now,
I could
where
see
it's going
that
to be a
too.
Jack versus Oddfellow style year. You
Mhm.
have Oddfellow, Pumpkin Lord, you have Sinister and Surreal, and then you have whomever comes out this year going up against your typicals, your Jacks, your caretakers, your so and so's. I think that's what they're leaning towards.
I could see them bringing Lady Luck back this year, or a past icon. I don't know why. I feel like this year with Sinister and Surreal that they maybe weren't as well received as they expected them to be, and they really weren't able to do as much with them as maybe they hoped. So
I hope they see the reception of them and don't get weary of doing new ones, but make
Mhm.
sure that when you do the new ones, they are developed.
Mhm. It just kind of sucks too, because as much as I love new things and it is fun to see these new creative characters or icons or iconic characters, whatever you want to say, it's I feel like Horror Nights is so nostalgic in that sense with those icons, and I feel like a lot of people are very familiar with them and enjoy them, and even with it not being an IP or a big name, I feel like sometimes like when Jack is always there, like that's a big thing. Like I feel like
Mm-hmm.
maybe I like him as an icon that I don't get annoyed with it, but even some of these older icons back in the day when commercials on TV used to be more prevalent and kind of delved more into their story, like with the director or the caretaker or the usher and stuff like that. I don't I don't know. I just think it'd be cool. Maybe if they weren't to do an icon that we've already had, I think they might pull something from the archive, kind of like how they did with Oddfellow, already a
Mm-hmm.
character that's kind of in the
They could do
books
that.
and known
Yeah.
about versus a whole new creating of an icon.
A whole new world. Oh, different park. Sorry, different park.
Sorry,
Um,
sorry.
but yeah, so those are our way too early predictions for HHN34. If you have some that we didn't talk about, let us know. Love to hear everybody's theories. I did put out a little poll. Actually, let's go see what some people's suggestions were, or predictions at least.
Honorable mention, I feel like it's way too long, but The Haunting of Hill House was such a fire house, and I'm still waiting for the day that we get a Haunting of friggin' Bly Manor House. It would
Not
just
happening.
not happening is too long, I know, but it would just be such a stunning house and it would be scary.
Yeah, I don't think it's happening. Someone did put reverse jinx. The Universal Monster House won't be creature in parentheses since I'm wrong every year. Killer clowns somehow returning. That would be interesting. I wouldn't hate it. Hatchet and Chains house. Yep. Fall the House of Usher.
Okay, cool. See,
I liked the
someone's
series, but I feel like it's tough.
in the
That's a tough one to
Flaniverse.
pull off. Gremlins. I just watched that today. There's multiple people shouting out Five Nights at Freddy, The
That's right.
Lost Boys. That would be interesting.
Okay.
That would be fun.
Same thing. That's a freaking Warner Brothers, so it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly.
Last of Us 2, Smile 2, Beetlejuice 2, lots of twos.
Mm-hmm.
Scream. I don't know. Maybe not. Conjuring House. Think alike. Definitely think alike. Terrifier. Mentioned that. Scary Tales Wizard of Oz. Now that's an interesting one.
You know what? I
We
was thinking of something like that with Wicked and everything being so hyped up right now.
on our guest map last year, we put Wizard of Oz
You sure
because I
did.
thought they would kind of recreate that. That was my cobbler kind of thing. Friday the 13th. A couple of people put Stranger Things 5. I do think we will finish Stranger Things at Horror Nights, but I do think that's a 35 event.
Yeah.
Because they're still filming it. I doubt that they even gets released until at least next November. I don't think we're gonna
I
conclude
was
the
going to say
Stranger Things
December.
series. Yeah, I think it'll probably drop November, December of 25. It'll probably finish. The way Netflix does stuff now, it's super annoying, but they'll probably drop it in like 3 parts. So they'll
I
probably do a
know.
drop. They'll probably put like 3 or 4 episodes out in November,
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 in February, and then probably finish it off in like June or July
I think
of
that's what they did with
26.
last season too for it, or the most recent season. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they broke it up in 2 parts last time, I think, but this year I think they'll stretch it out into 3 or
Which was
to 3
fun to
different
have
parts.
something to look forward to at least, but
Yeah, it's
I know you
interesting.
like watching everything at once.
I do, but at least with like the Stranger Things, the way that they're billing this last season is that each episode is like a movie. So like
Mm-hmm.
each episode is going to be like an hour and a half to 2 hours long.
I'm excited. And I
So if
usually
they
don't
drop
like
12 if they
go on,
drop
sorry.
12 episodes like that at once, my week is fucked. I got to take that whole week off.
I gotta take the whole week off.
All right. But yeah, let's wrap up. We got Thanksgiving just around the corner. So let's go enjoy some family time. I hope everybody gets a good
Thanksgiving.
holiday. Be sure to check our socials on Sunday, December 1st, because we got a fun little announcement for you all.
Yay. The
Yes.
holidays are coming. friends.
We got something for you all. But until
We
next
do.
time, this is Nick.
And this is Jamie.
Happy Hans. Thank you for listening to another episode of Fear and Beer, a Halloween Horror Nights podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on whatever streaming platform you are listening to us on. You can find us on all of our socials at Fear and Beer Pod.